Our last devotion of the week. This one really caught me. In verse 49, so Jesus is just about to send this new follower, this new disciple, off on the way of peace. And it's the last little thing I referenced a few days ago. It was suspicion of forgiveness. Right? It says, the men at the table, verse 49, the men at the table said amongst themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" Or goes around forgiving sins. Definitely the tenor is a suspicion of who Jesus is. But I want us to focus on the first little words, the men seated at the table. Part of what I want us to recognize is that there were no women at the table. In those gatherings and in that culture, men were the only one really invited to the table in this kind of situation. And yet Jesus does something so radical, and it's seen throughout Luke and throughout the Gospels, but we can easily miss it. Jesus invites women to the table. Ladies, this day is for you. Jesus invites women to the table. That was part of what felt inappropriate to Simon, was this woman, let alone a prostitute, was coming in and coming near his table where all the men were having a conversation and a dialogue. And all of a sudden this woman is there interrupting things. But what Jesus basically does with this woman is invite her to the table. It's interesting to me, as we move into chapter 8 of Luke, the first thing we see are the women that have been invited to the table. Check it out. Look at the first 3 verses of Luke 8. It says that Jesus went from town to town as he's, going around still healing people and teaching, and, wouldn't have been fun to have been one of those towns where Jesus came. And it makes mention of the 12, and the 12 are with him. And then, by name, it says Mary Magdalene, who had been delivered of 7 demons. Wow. Some actually believe that the woman of Luke 7 is Mary Magdalene. That possibly there's a reasonable connection there. That maybe this Mary Magdalene that shows up in chapter 8 is exactly the woman that came into Simon's house. And now she's been invited to the table. She's supporting the ministry of Jesus. And then he mentions Joanna. Joanna is a part of Herod's household, literally works under Herod Antipas, who's the guy that threw John the Baptist into prison. And yet, in that political arena, there's a woman who comes to faith that literally is a part of 2 worlds, the world of Herod and the world of Jesus. And she's going from town to town supporting Jesus out of her own pocket. And then Susanna. We don't know much about Susanna except for the fact that she was invited to the table. I wonder who's been invited to the table for you. All of us need people. We need brothers and sisters that can speak into our life. People that have been changed by the grace of God. People who've encountered God's extravagant forgiveness. So today, encourage maybe someone that you think doesn't necessarily belong to the table to have a seat at the table and see what happens. It was good to be with you this week. Wasn't our passage fun? Lord, thank you for your word and how powerful it touches and affects our lives. Jesus, we keep coming back to you, and thank you for inviting us to the table of forgiveness, us to the table of redemption, us to the table for service. We love you, Lord. Bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye.